if everything works out the way it should, and obviously PBC, Al Haymon's promotion, manages to win the bid for the Sean Porter versus Terrence Crawford fight, and on top of that, Canelo goes over to PBC for a fight, there could be an opportunity for PBC, Al Haymon's promotional group, to become the most powerful entity in boxing. I mean, think about it. They've got Canelo, who's the biggest name in boxing, and then they've got Terrence Crawford as well, which makes the potential of the Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford fight happening bigger than ever. So if that was to actually happen, you can make a case that Al Haymon's PBC group will be the strongest promotional stable in boxing, bar none. I mean, just think about that. If they were in a position to actually do that, if they were in a position to actually, if they managed to get Terrence Crawford onto PBC, and they managed to get Canelo onto PBC for that short period of time, for however long Canelo decides to stay with PBC, and let's just say Terrence Crawford decides to do a long-term promotional deal with PBC. I mean, in that space of time, Terrence Crawford could fight the likes of Porter, Furman, obviously the Spence fight, Danny Garcia, all these top welterweight fighters. And if they can make Terrence Crawford become a huge star in relatively speaking in the US, and they eventually make the super fight with Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence, there could be a chance that a PBC becomes one of the best promotional stables in the UK. Now obviously the fact remains that in terms of bidding for the Terrence Crawford fight, DAZN's going to put a big bid in, and the fact is, I'm actually happy that they're bidding, because what that means is both Terrence Crawford and Sean Porter are both going to be paid a lot of money for their fight. They're both going to make probably a couple million each if the bid is high enough. And you've got to remember, for the Teofimo Lopez versus Kambosos fight, the person that won that particular bid was Triller. So if Triller's in the mix as well, on top of DAZN, on top of the PBC, there could be a chance that PBC doesn't win the bid, and Terrence Crawford goes to another fighter who's a bigger bidder. But there could also be a chance that Terrence Crawford does win the bid, that the PBC does win the bid for Terrence Crawford. And if they manage to get Terrence Crawford onto their stable, as well as get Canelo on their stable, because Canelo looks like he may sign with the PBC to make the Caleb Plant fight. For that short period of time, PBC might be the strongest promotional entity in boxing for that short period of time. Whether they can continue that success is another thing, but for that short period of time, there could be a chance that PBC can wipe off their debts, especially with a Canelo fight. Canelo draws in a huge number of viewers and viewership, so there could be a huge chance that PBC might be on top again. The fact is, in the past, that PBC at one point was on top, and that was when Andrew Ruiz beat Anthony Joshua for all the titles. Andrew Ruiz had most of the heavyweight titles, and they also had Deontay Wilder, who had the WBC title. So at that one moment in time, it was a short period of time, but for that one moment in time, they had full control over the heavyweight division. They had Deontay Wilder, who had the WBC title, and they had Andrew Ruiz, who had all the rest of the titles. And for that short period of time, they literally made a way for PBC to be the one of the top promotional stables in boxing, because there's a saying, if you control the heavyweight division, you do control boxing. And to some extent, in the past, that was more true, because the heavyweight champion was seen as the biggest sports star on the planet. But today it's not so true. I think it's more to do with pay-per-view numbers and who draws the most numbers in. Right now, that's Canelo and probably Anthony Joshua, who ironically is a heavyweight. But at one point, PBC did have all of the heavyweight champions. It was a short period of time. Obviously, the rematch happened, and Anthony Joshua regained all of his titles. But can this happen again? Can if Canelo goes over to PBC and PBC manages to get a bid for the Terrence Crawford, win the bid for the Terrence Crawford versus Sean Porter fight, and then Terrence Crawford decides to fight for the PBC and decides to sign with PBC and fight all of their welterweights for that short period of time, could PBC become the biggest force in boxing? There could be a strong chance that it happens. Obviously, DAZN still have Anthony Joshua, and Canelo might go back to DAZN. but for a short period of time, there's a very, very strong chance that PBC could become the biggest promotional platform, the best, the biggest, the highest grossing promotional platform on the planet, because they've got the best fighter in Canelo, plus on top of that they've got Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence as well, and obviously that's a huge super fight that everybody wants to see. So for that short period of time, PBC might be on top, but obviously a lot of chips and stars have to align for that to happen. For one, they have to win the bid. Second of all, Canelo has to want to go over to PBC, which does look like it's going to happen, because they want to get that fight against he wants to get that fight with Caleb Plant to unify the super middleweight division. So there is a very strong chance that it could happen, but there's also a chance that it doesn't happen. Like if Triller or DAZN bid for the Sean Porter versus Terrence Crawford fight and outbid all of their opposition, if Canelo decides to go with DAZN, when DAZN sees that he's thinking of going to PBC, DAZN might just decide to pay him extra just to keep them with them. So there's a big chance that it doesn't happen, but there's also a chance that it could happen. I mean, who would have thought that Andy Ruiz would have beaten Anthony Joshua, and Al Haymon'S PBC brand would have had all the heavyweight champions in the world? At that time, before that fight happened, there was no way that anyone thought Andy Ruiz was going to beat Anthony Joshua just by looking at them both. But obviously that is exactly what happened. So you never know with this sport. It's a very unpredictable sport. You don't know what's going to happen next, what's around the corner. But I'm just saying there may be a possibility that PBC in the future may become one of the strongest promotional platforms on the planet. Whether they can continue that success and go strength to strength and keep becoming stronger and stronger remains to be seen, but for a brief moment at least they could become the strongest platform on the planet. Tell me what you think below. Who do you think is right now leading the way? Right now I think it's DAZN. They've got Anthony Joshua, they've got Canelo, they've got all these slew of other fighters that are top fighters. But who do you think right now is the best? Who do you think in the future will come out on top and become the best promotional platform in boxing? Do you think it's going to be the PBC? Do you think it'll be Matchroom? Do you think it'll be DAZN? Do you think it'll be Bob Arum's Top Rank promotion? Who do you think will come out on top? Like and subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot more content coming your way. Peace out.